Westuhal min Freund and welcome to another video. Now, The Rings of Power by Amazon, the upcoming The Lord of the Rings project that is going to come out September the 2nd, 2022, is a golden mine for video content, and it provides me with more and more ideas, which is really the only positive thing about it, isn't it? And we could discuss many things concerning the Rings of Power. We could discuss many aspects of it, but also situations that are connected to the upcoming show. And one of them is very personal to me, and I shall explain why. And that is the departure of Tom Shippey, the worldwide famous academic, from the project. He was supposed to be a consultant there, and then he left. Now, as everything else revolving around the show, it's unclear and vague why he left. And there were some official or semi-official statements, but there are more and more news are confirmed, and then the opposite, and then Amazon says this and Amazon says that I really don't know what's true and what isn't anymore. But what I can remember is that officially he was supposed to be fired from the project because he broke the silence treaty. Like, he said something in an interview, in a German interview, that he wasn't supposed to say. I think it was a German interview. Might have not been. I don't know. If you know, let me know in the comments down below. I would like to know for sure. But what I think is that he told Amazon something that they didn't like. He being the expert on Tolkien in the world. And that he wasn't very excited about what they were doing. And that's why he left. Or was fired. And of course, a lot of people are angry about it, quite understandably. Well, I'm not. I'm actually quite excited about the fact that he left. Because who would want to be associated with Amazon and what they're doing if one is a true expert on Tolkien? And not only that, we would be doing Tom Shippey a disservice if we were only to think about him as a Tolkien scholar. Now, I am slowly getting to why it's so personal to me, but first I would like to say a few words about Tom Shippey. I had to write it down, I had to take notes, because there are so many things I couldn't have remembered it by heart. So, he is a British medievalist, a scholar of Old English and Middle English literature, as well as of modern fantasy and science fiction literature. He worked and taught at the Leeds University and at Oxford University, which, if you think about it, it's really, he followed in his life in Tolkien's footsteps. And even in many an interview, he was talking about that he followed Tolkien's footsteps not only in the, as far as career goes, the academic and scholarly career, but also as far as hobbies go. Of course, he is Tom Shippey, a master linguist, philologist, but he also loved rugby and myths and legends and folklore. But at the same time, Tom Shippey is the world's leading expert on Tolkien, of course, but also on modern fantasy and science fiction literature. And he edited many compilation or short story collections of fantasy literature, science fiction literature. Namely, he edited both the Oxford Book of Science Fiction Stories and the Oxford Book of Fantasy Stories. He himself wrote many short stories that won fantasy and science fiction awards. As far as Tolkien goes, then, he's famous for his essays and for his lectures, such as, and I'm just naming a few, Tolkien as philologist, creation from philology in The Lord of the Rings, and he was the chair of English language and medieval English literature at Leeds University, which is a position that Tolkien had as well when he taught at Leeds University. And he provided many a filmmaker with interviews for documentaries about Tolkien. One of them, I mentioned that in one of my previous videos, can be found on YouTube in its full length. It's narrated by Dame Judi Dench, and half of it, really, I would say, is composed only of interviews with Tom Shippey, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's even got an interview with, I think, the Queen of Norway, which is quite admirable. And one other thing I want, or Denmark, was it? I don't know. You can tell me in the comments down below. But also, he was a dialect coach and advisor and consultant during all Peter Jackson's films, both The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So, you can see that such a man would really be only wasting his talent and his time at a project like The Rings of Power. Now, why is it so personal to me? Because something similar happened to me, but I wasn't a part of a making of a film. But the woke culture, and it is a fact, I have known it on my own experiences. I have my experiences with that, with the fact that the woke culture revolved around inclusivity, as they call it, and representation of various marginalized groups, is of course coming from academia first. It is the activists, the social activists, that are starting these movements, and this then progressively they get into high positions in entertainment industry, and because everybody else is afraid of them, that they might have say that somebody is being offended or oppressed, then everybody bows down to them. But it all starts at universities, and I've got my own experiences with that. When I was studying for my PhD, I had to go on a hiatus because there was no chance for me to go on conferences, to publish articles, because in order for one to get a PhD, you need to go, one needs to go to conferences, and actively participate at conferences, give speeches, give lectures. You have to write articles, you have to publish articles in academic magazines and collections. Well, the subject matter I was focusing on was Old English literature and fantasy of the 20th century. And it was my specialty at the university where I was to combine these two. So, for example, I wrote my bachelor thesis about the use of runic letters in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. I wrote my master's thesis on the use of the alliterative or the Germanic alliterative verse in the 20th century. You can find many authors, many poets, including Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, of course, W.H. Auden, and so on and so forth, who were using alliterative verse in the 20th century. That very verse, that metre, that poetic metre, that was being used by the Germanic peoples in, like the circa from the half of the first millennium until, well, we could say Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and the Pearl, and then, a bit further into the High Middle Ages, but not really afterwards. But then, of course, then I called it the Renaissance of the alliterative verse in the 20th century. And, people like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, W.H. Auden were responsible for this. And this inspired me, of course. And in a month, I shall post a link in the description down below for my Czech subscribers and my Slovakian subscribers. I'll have a poetry collection of my own writing published in Czech of alliterative poetry written in modern Czech. Because I was inspired by people like Tolkien, like Tom Shippey, like C.S. Lewis. Academically. It's not just that I love fantasy, that I love The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. I'm not here to cite passages from the Silmarillion. Everybody can do that. Everybody can grab a book. This isn't Silmarillion, but, I used it for one of my previous videos. This is the Return of the King. I mean, everybody can open a book and cite from The Lord of the Rings. I had my academic career planned. But there were no chances, no opportunities, because everything is revolved around different kinds of literature, not what I was focusing on. the modern stuff, let's say, the wokey stuff. And all the conferences were revolving around representation of this and that group in that literary sphere. And the articles that I wrote and sent to the university publishers, they were always postponed because there was always a topic that was more popular. And so I wasn't able to continue, and I was discouraged, and I was appalled by the situation, and I left. It was me. I just gave up. I admit it was a weak move, a coward's move on my side, that I left. Well, I've decided to start again this year, actually. It comes fall, autumn, I'm going to start and apply for a PhD. Maybe at a different university, who knows. But I didn't want to be associated with something that I don't believe in, with something that with a place and people that did not want me and that didn't appreciate me and my passion for the good old things, as I call them, the traditional things, the traditional ways of storytelling, the traditional way of composing poetry, old languages, Germanic peoples. I was even called a different kinds of ist just for being obsessed with the history of the Anglo-Saxons and the Scandinavians, and the old Icelandic literature, the old High German literature, such as the Nibelungenlied, so on and so forth. I had to leave. So this reminds me a little bit Tom Shippey's situation. Why would he be associated with them? It's much better for him to leave. And that's the conclusion and the final thought of this video. It's better that he left or was fired. Because who would want to be, Tom Shippey and be associated with Amazon and what they're doing? He's much better off not being there. So let Amazon use their actors who know nothing about Tolkien, who are only pretending to know The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, so on and so forth, who are talking about diversity and representation in interviews and videos that are being unlisted by Amazon Prime's YouTube channel because it gets ratioed so much. Let them drown in their own shame without Tom Shippey, the master. So let me know in the comments down below what you think, if you agree with me or not, and what you think about all this. Once again, thank you very much for watching. The last time I checked, I had over 2,500 subscribers. Never thought I could get there, and it's all thanks to you, my dear friends, fellow fantasy fans, fellow Tolkien fans. We shall endure. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, Namarie.